Good afternoon, all, and thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon, Inclusion and Advocacy, Closing the Wealth Gap, presented by Fifth Third Bank. My name is Tanya Latta. I'm with the Financial Health Network, and I'll be facilitating today's conversation. Before we move into it, I have a few housekeeping items I'd like to walk through. I can advance the slide. All attendees have been placed in listen-only mode. If you'd like to access closed captioning, please select closed caption and then view full transcript at the bottom of your screen. We will be monitoring the chat box, so please add any questions or comments you might have throughout the discussion. We'll do our best to get to those. Next slide. While we want to foster an open dialogue and create an atmosphere of trust, we also want to be aware of what may appear to be antitrust conflicts. At the Financial Health Network, we abide by and require our attendees to abide by the spirit and the letter of antitrust laws. Now with some of that housekeeping out of the way, let's look quickly at how we're going to spend the next hour together. I'll begin with a brief introduction of our speakers and then quickly move into why this subject matters. To frame the conversation, I'll speak to the equity work that the Financial Health Network has been developing, which will contextualize the broader conversation about the wealth gap and inequities. We're then so pleased to be able to introduce, to hear from Marc Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League, who will discuss their efforts to remove barriers to equity in their partnership with Fifth Third Bank to close the income gap through innovative financial empowerment and workforce development efforts. Finally, we'll turn to the various members of the Fifth Third team and partake in a bit of a panel discussion, at which point we'll also have some time for audience Q&A. So by way of introduction, again, my name is Tanya Latta. I'm a senior director here at the Financial Health Network, and I will be facilitating today's conversation. I'll be joined by Kalad Gibson, Chief Enterprise Corporate Responsibility Officer and Head of Business Banking at Fifth Third, Stephanie A. Smith, Senior Vice President and Chief Inclusion and Diversity Officer, another Stephanie, Stuart Young, Chief Corporate Social Responsibility Officer, also at Fifth Third, as well as Marc Morial, CEO and President of the National Urban League. So as I mentioned, I want to spend a few minutes to start this conversation by discussing how the Financial Health Network has been beginning to more intentionally embed the idea of equity into our work. As a quick refresh at the Financial Health Network, we believe that financial health comes about when one's daily financial management systems really allow an individual to build resilience and pursue long-term opportunity. We run a network of over 160 financial health innovators, from banks and credit unions to nonprofits and fintech, to really push the envelope year after year on improving financial health for all. And in order to work towards financial health for all, it's important that we acknowledge that the tools and systems that currently exist have been inequitable and led to disparity in financial health outcomes for decades. The system as it currently exists does not allow everyone the equal ability to build resilience and pursue opportunity or to achieve financial health. This is a simple yet very powerful image, and I'm guessing that many of you on the call have seen this or some version of it. And it really just demonstrates that equality is not the same thing as equity. Because of the historical barriers I just mentioned to access and opportunity, different demographics have had different experiences and thus different outcomes. Organizations must build solutions that address those specific needs of the different populations that they serve, and those solutions won't and can't and mustn't look the same for all populations. So with this in mind, we need to understand where the inequities lie and work towards supporting communities to achieve equal outcomes. At the Financial Health Network, we define financial health equity as equal financial health outcomes across all people and populations, especially those that have faced systemic and historic barriers to economic opportunity and financial security. Financial health equity is a critical input in achieving financial health for all, which I mentioned was our mission. At Financial Health Network, we assess financial health equity using our scoring tools to identify and understand outcomes across different demographics and dimensions of identity, including race and ethnicity, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation and ability. Once we better understand and identify these inequities, we can collectively work together to achieve financial health for all. So one term I want to pull out of that definition that I just walked through is this idea of dimensions of identity. So of course, each of us have myriad dimensions to our identity. We're a child, a neighbor, a colleague. That said, certain demographics have been and continue to be subject to systemic barriers and discrimination in ways that have impacted many parts of their life, including their financial health and their ability to build wealth. This slide presents several common dimensions of identity. And for the purposes of today's webinar, we're going to focus specifically on race. We've pulled a few stats from our US Financial Health Pulse to demonstrate the outcome of decades of some of these inequitable practices at a very high level. Again, I know I just said it a few minutes ago, but as a refresh at the Financial Health Network, we think about financial health really looking like an individual having daily financial systems and tools that allow them to build resiliency in the face of economic shocks or volatility and really build and pursue long-term opportunity. We've created a measurement system across various indicators and really think about 4 distinct financial health behaviors: spending, saving, borrowing, planning. And as we score each of those dimensions, we aggregate into one financial health score. So we pulled data, again, from our US Financial Health Pulse, which is a nationally representative survey. And you'll see here on this slide that we found there's a 15-point gap between the financial health of white Americans and those of Black and Latinx Americans. When you dig a little bit deeper, we examined and pulled data across those 4 financial behaviors I mentioned: spend, save, borrow, and plan, and compared the national averages to those of Black Americans. The data show that outcomes for Black Americans are lower than national averages, signaling that this segment of our nation's population are struggling more with their financial health than others. So the Financial Health Network, we've created a set of commitments that we and our network members can take to begin addressing and eliminating these financial health inequities. It really does all begin with measuring the financial health of your clients and your constituents, and then disaggregating that data so you really understand how different populations are faring with the products and services and programs that you're offering. Then we do believe it's important for organizations to understand some of those root causes of the inequities so that they can build responsive and responsible solutions to eliminate those inequities. So really by understanding what's causing some of these issues, you can build specific solutions that meet those specific needs. So today we'll be discussing the ways in which Fifth Third has partnered and invested in solutions to begin addressing financial health inequities of Black Americans through cross-sector partnerships and workforce development efforts. I am so pleased to introduce our next speaker, who will tell us more about this partnership, Mr. Marc Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League. Mr. Morial has led the Urban League for over 15 years, empowering the organization's national affiliate movement in service of communities of color. Having served as both a state senator in Louisiana and mayor of New Orleans, in addition to his executive leadership at the Urban League, Mr. Morial brings a wealth of insight and experience to this important conversation. Mr. Morial, it is a great pleasure and honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for the generous introduction as well as for the presentation. Let me thank the team at Fifth Third Bank for the new partnership with the National Urban League, as well as for their commitment to this very important work. And let me also take this opportunity to thank and welcome Kala Gibson, who has just joined the Board of Trustees of the National Urban League. Welcome, Kala. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to working very closely with you. Let me outline some basics about financial health, because sometimes this subject matter, as crucial as it is, can get very complicated. And sometimes when it gets complicated, we say, that's why I don't like talking about it, focusing on it. Let me just go back to what I was doing. But it is critical to understand that for most Americans, the foundation of their economic well-being, the foundation is the money they earn from the work that they do. The money they earn for the work that they do. And for the vast majority of Americans, that means it's the earnings, the income, the check they receive every other 2 weeks from the job that they hold. Now, there are another set of Americans whose wealth comes, whose income comes, whose financial well-being comes from the ownership of things. They may own a business, and they may work for the business. And that's the foundation of their economic well-being. For others, they may own stocks and bonds. They may own real estate that they don't habitate. And the income generated, the earnings generated by that provide the foundation of their financial well-being. But let's talk about the first group, which is the vast majority of people and families and individuals, because it is that group that the National Urban League has a very significant focus on, and wishes to empower and seeks to change the lives of those who are like many, many Americans, particularly, no doubt, African Americans and Latinos. The vast majority, overwhelming majority, are living on their earnings. One of the most compelling challenges in America today is the idea that the money that most of us earn, probably 80% of the population earns, the amount of money we earn has not increased commensurate with the increase in the rate of inflation over the past roughly 30 years. So one's income goes like this, inflation goes like that. And therefore, those earnings do not seem to go as far this year as they went 5 years ago or 7 years ago, even for some who earn raises and promotions. Now, having said that, one of the centerpieces of the partnership between the National Urban League and Fifth Third is in this broad category called workforce development. And it is about, number one, yes, helping people who may be unemployed to find work, but it's also about people who are employed, giving them the support, the skilling that they need to move to better paying jobs. And this is a considerable focus because we recognize that for some people, number one, we have an economy that's rapidly changing. And therefore, for people to keep up with the economy, we've got to continue to learn new things. Number two, we have people in the community who may not have finished high school. We have people in the community who may have finished high school, didn't avail themselves of community college or college, sometimes for good reason. They couldn't afford it, or they needed to work to take care of kids, family, parents, etc., or themselves. And very importantly, we are working in this partnership to try to give people additional skills that they need to move up the economic ladder. The starting point for all of the National Urban League's workforce development programs is to ensure that everyone has basic literacy and basic numeracy. That's usually associated with a high school diploma or what's sometimes referred to as a general equivalency diploma. And that is one of the foundations of the work we do, because it's one thing to help a person get a job. It's another thing to help them get a job that's sustainable on a career path that will allow them to grow. And it is that is the emphasis of the work of the National Urban League. And we do that work for a wide range of people in the community. We do it from people who may be leaving what is commonly known as public assistance or welfare to get into a sustainable job. We do it for people who may have a higher skill level, who even want to get a higher set of skills. Best example is in the technology space, in the technology industry. We do it for people who may have spent time incarcerated, who are what we call returning citizens. And we want to assist them, number one, in not repeating, and number two, achieving financial sustainability. And those are the kinds of things that are going to be animated, energized, expanded with the work of the partnership of the National Urban League and Fifth Third Bank. It's an important foundation for people to be in sustainable work and on a career path. And the more we can do that, the better off we are. And we realize, look, that some people may be 28, 29, 31, 2, 3, 4, 5, 40 years old and say, you know what? I want to go back and get some additional training, learning, education, so that I can move up, because I may not be able to move up without it. And what we try to do is make that training affordable, because our services are free. We try to make it available because we're community-based. And we try to make it culturally competent because we focus on serving Black people and other people of color. So in this partnership, that is a very important part of what we do. Now, in the financial sustainability space, we do even more than workforce development. We assist people in acquiring assets, primarily that home that becomes the home of their dreams. And last year across the nation, even with COVID, we assisted some 1,500 roughly people to become homeowners with non-predatory loans. We do it through a program called housing counseling. We give people a financial coach. They work with people to ensure that they understand the responsibilities, put a family budget together, know what they're going to do, and know the signs so that they're not ripped off by unscrupulous real estate agents or financial providers or sellers of homes or mortgage bankers. We prepare people to achieve that asset, to buy that home of their dreams. And so this work is all, we may look at it differently. One's housing, the other's jobs. This is all about family sustainability and wealth building, which is the key to financial health. And then thirdly, we work very, very closely with many small businesses, Black-owned businesses. What is a small business? Self-employment. You want to work for yourself. You want to be your own boss. That's what most small business owners are, particularly small business owners in the Black community, when some 85 to 90% of all Black businesses have one employee. But we got to support that, because in the United States, there may be 2 million plus one person Black-owned shops, stores, businesses in the country. So I just wanted to take a few minutes today to highlight the very important dynamic of this work and why it's so important today. We've got this disparity in unemployment. We've got a disparity in wealth. I just looked at some figures. I want to get them right, so I'm gonna confer with my notes because of a presentation, because it's important for people to know these numbers and to understand what the data shows. So Black income on average is 60% that of whites. Black joblessness is 2 times what white joblessness is, or white unemployment. And then, of course, African-American businesses, even the largest ones in the country, would barely maybe hit the bottom of the Fortune 500 list. So we got some work to do. But on the other hand, the spending power of Black America is significant. It's 1 trillion plus. That's a tremendous amount of power to impact and energize places and people with whom we spend money. So I want to thank Fifth Third Bank for this partnership. We're going to do this work. I wanted to take a minute and tell you a little bit about how we do this work. And at the end of the day, we're trying to give people an individual plan of action that helps them get the type of support and training they need in an area they want to work in, an area they love and like, in an area that's going to give them the compensation level they expect. I appreciate you, Fifth Third Bank, for the partnership and for the work that you do, and the team at Fifth Third Bank. And we look forward to continuing to work closely with you to empower communities, change lives, and make a huge difference in the lives of people. I'll turn it back over for further commentary and questions at some point. Thank you.
Oh, I'm on mute. Thanks so much, Mark. I appreciate those words. We have a couple of minutes built in if there are any specific questions the audience has for Mark. And otherwise, I didn't see any coming through there. And so if not, we're going to move straight into the panel discussion with the 3 members of the Fifth Third team that we have here. Again, we have Kala Gibson, Stephanie A. Smith, and Stephanie Stewart Young. So thank you all so much for joining and talking about this important partnership with us. We are so thrilled to be able to host and have this conversation with you. Kala, I'm going to start the panel discussion with a question for you. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about why it's important to Fifth Third what the bank is doing to accelerate racial inequity, address racial inequality, and really promote inclusion, and how specifically access to capital helps create equity in your communities.
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. And let me first start with saying thank you, Mark, for welcoming myself and the bank to the National Urban League family. Obviously, you guys are doing unbelievable work, and it's an honor for us to partner with you to help to continue to push through your vision and our vision as well as relates to helping our communities. Also want to give you a pre-Founders Day, happy Founders Day for my brother from Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity as well. And then
A506.
And then lastly, again, before I jump in, I want to say again, congratulations to Stephanie Stewart Young, who's on the call. She was just promoted to our Chief Corporate Social Responsibility Officer. And as I answer your question, I would jump into why Stephanie is so important to this effort. So back to your question. So again, 2020 has been one of those very challenging years, an unbelievable year that I think all of us are just looking forward to being over. Earlier in the year, obviously in March, when the pandemic hit, we start to see the social inequalities that we already knew. We've already heard the saying that when America catches a cold, Black America catches pneumonia. In this case here, when America gets a pandemic, we saw what's happened disproportionately to African Americans, Hispanics as well, right? So we saw that and knew that there had to be a rallying cry. And so we started to do some work at Fifth Third to think about, what type of impact can we have outside of financial inclusion and financial services, right? About social justice and how do we actually have a voice? And then obviously at the end of May, with the killing of George Floyd, we really then just brought our leadership team together and said, enough is enough. We're going to be on the right side of right. Our belief is this, is that, equality, social justice, it starts with financial equality. When you think about wealth, and Mark talked about this, the wealth gap that we have, a lot of that is just based on structural and systemic racism that, quite frankly, historically, our financial institutions have been a part of, right? We know that. But what Fifth Third has said, and some of our other institutions, so I don't want to say this is just a Fifth Third thing, that we've all recognized that and know that we play an important part when it comes to access to capital, financial inclusion and education, and again, workforce development. So again, we're excited about the opportunity to do more. We talked about access to capital. We're going to continue to invest in our communities in a way that's going to be different, right? Different than what we've done in the past, because now we want to be very specific on the neighborhoods and things that we're doing to help turn this around. It's going to be a journey, but we're really excited about taking this journey with our partners, and particularly with the National Urban League.
Kala, can you just talk a little bit, a few more sentences about how you think access to capital specifically can help create equity in our communities?
Yeah, so I always get into a debate with people around this. So, my other title is head of business banking. So obviously I'm biased towards entrepreneurship and small business development. But I would say if home ownership is 1A, then entrepreneurship, small business is 1B, as it comes to closing the wealth gap. And one of the challenges that's occurred there is, again, access to capital for African Americans. We think about all the different regulations. CRA wouldn't exist if it was equitable, and if we were all doing the right things back in the 50s and the 60s as it relates to financial inclusion and equality. So it has to be on front and center around how do we provide access to capital for small businesses to start and for them to grow, but also how do we create programs that folks can have a piece of the American dream, which is home ownership, and how are they going to be able to pass that wealth either through the ownership of real estate or ownership of a business on to future generations. And that starts to build. And that's been the gap. That's been our challenge. So again, we're going to double down on that and make sure that we're creative around how we provide access to capital in both of those spaces.
Well, I appreciate you naming specifically the role that many financial institutions have played in the creation of these gaps and inequities. And the flip side of that coin, of course, is that there is such an important role to play in addressing and eliminating those gaps. So I think the common denominator there is that financial institutions wield a very powerful lever in these issues, and the more investment and intentional creation of solutions, I think the more we move towards sort of a justice framework. The next question I have is for Stephanie Stewart-Young. So Kala was just discussing sort of the historical context and the power of creating access to capital in certain communities. And we know that there are neighborhoods and communities that have experienced decades of disinvestment. And that's had impacts not only on the financial lives of those residents, but also other areas of life. So talk to me a little bit about how Fifth Third thinks about improving some of those outcomes and quality of life standards through innovative financial solutions, through increased access, through targeted inclusion strategies.
Yes, thanks, Tanya. One thing that I always say is most people want the same thing for their communities. They want a safe, they want a decent place to live, work, and raise their families. And so in communities that have historically been disinvested in, I think it's critical that you have collaborative partnerships between key community stakeholders, including the residents themselves, but also public and private sectors, to be at the table to really come up with the keys and the things that are needed to transform communities and improve the overall quality of life. So ideally, the community stakeholders should be aligned on their vision for that community, and the neighborhood plan and goals should address quality of life indicators such as income and jobs, housing conditions, health, education, and the overall safety of that community. Once community stakeholders are aligned, I think the next key critical thing is to have investments specifically in place, such as infrastructure and bricks and mortar, to improve the housing and retail stock in these communities. But also as critical is investment in people to ensure that there's the right programs and initiatives to help ensure families have access to the resources and the tools that they need to live a productive life. So I believe that the combination of stakeholder collaboration, alignment of community goals, and targeted investment strategy in people and place is the formula to ensure that communities of color are improved and closer to realizing their full potential. So I'm extremely excited that Fifth Third will be announcing in the coming weeks a partnership with a nationally known and well-respected community development leader, a specific initiative that will focus on targeted strategic investments, inclusive of philanthropy, lending, and investments in communities of color. Our goal for this effort is to support neighborhoods in achieving their hopes, their dreams, and their aspirations. But at the same time, we want to spur a leveraged investment model to ensure transformational impact and also sustainability for these neighborhoods. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to announce this in the coming weeks. And I really hope that this is the catalyst for other similar investments in communities of color throughout the country. And so we really hope that others really get on board and say, you know what, this is a great model and we want to do the same thing.
What a teaser, Stephanie. We'll all be waiting to hear and looking for that headline. But that sounds very exciting, very promising, particularly on the heels of this newly announced and minted partnership with National Urban League.
Mm-hmm.
I'll move to your colleague, Stephanie, also Stephanie Smith. And we've heard a little bit today on the call about an element of the partnership with the Urban League that focuses on providing access to and training for high quality jobs. And I really appreciated Marc in his comments and remarks talking about acknowledging the different paths that different types of individuals may take to get and secure that high quality job and high quality employment. And so as we think about the sort of employee focused piece of that work stream, I'm wondering if you could talk with some specificity about the strategic focus, not only on the Black workforce, but about the bold goals that have been outlined by Fifth Third as you think about this element of the broader equity lens.
Thank you, Tanya. I really believe that it's important to sort of get a snapshot of Fifth Third's historic investment in equality, equity, and inclusion, because we did not start this journey as the result of May 25th. So I'll say that the bank has been conducting pay equity analysis since 2011 to make sure that all employees, regardless of their diversity status, were being compensated fairly. We moved from that in 2016 when it was announced that corporations would receive a significant tax break. Our minimum wage at that time was $12 per hour. Our chairman and CEO, Greg Carmichael, is a huge believer that that was an opportunity for us to share the wealth as a corporation with our employees. We moved from $12 an hour in 2016 to $18 an hour in 2018, substantially increasing our minimum wage by 50%, and also getting our minimum salary to $37,400 above that poverty level, which is what you heard Marc Morial alluding to earlier. Our minimum wage for our employees is now a workable wage. So that was significant. We were the industry leader in making that step. Then in 2019, our own city council here in our headquartered market in Cincinnati, Ohio, announced that they would be providing an ordinance had been passed that we could no longer, as employers within this region of Cincinnati, collect historic salary history. They invoked a salary pay band history. Fifth Third did not only leverage that within this market, we leveraged it across our 11-state footprint. And what we all know, as Marc has indicated, is that persons of color, Black people, are making 60% on the dollar of their white colleagues. We believe that this salary pay band history, where we are no longer collecting historic salary information, will go a long way to closing that gap between women, minorities, and other persons of color. They can now go in and ask for what the market will bear. Now, that took us through 2019. In September of 2019, I presented our 6 bold goals to our board. I subsequently, myself, the human capital team, and others, then took those 6 bold goals and really began to look at them deeply and how we might accomplish the statements that we were making. I am pleased to say that this year, in September of 2020, those bold goals for inclusion and diversity across the board, I like what Marc was saying, is not just about Black people within our economy. It's as we raise the opportunities for one marginalized group, we raise them for all. So our 6 bold goals speak across the board to how Fifth Third wants a rising tide for all areas of diversity. To that end, our first bold goal was we wanted 100% of our employees to complete unconscious bias training. These bold goals take us through 2025. I will say to you that what we realized after the events of May 25th and the killing of George Floyd is we needed to accelerate that unconscious bias training because we were now in a different environment, the civil unrest. How were we going to equip all of our employees around unconscious bias? Because like we say here, if you have a brain, you have bias. And so we felt it was critical that we accelerate that, not through 2025, but make it relevant within the current time. I am pleased to say that as of September 30th of this year, 97% of Fifth Third Bank's employees have all gone through unconscious bias training. In the survey, we also asked a survey about their experience. Over 2,000 of our employees responded to that survey. Of that 2,000, over 1,900 had positive remarks and comments about their experience in that learning. Our second bold goal is to ensure the diversity of the bank's workforce and that it reflects the markets we serve. To that end, right now, 25% of the new branches and retail locations that Fifth Third will be standing up will represent those communities of which those branches are in. That means a specific focus on the work that Stephanie Stewart-Young will be leading and under the guidance of Kala Gibson as our Enterprise Corporate Responsibility Officer. We want to grow leadership positions at every management level for women and persons of color. We want to create a work environment where there is no disparity in race or gender, and that all of our employees really feel that there is a seamless reality for them coming from their lifestyles, their personal lifestyles, and into work. We don't want them to believe that they have to become someone different in order to deliver better work within our culture and in our environment. We want to advance the bank as a leader within the inclusion and diversity space. That means we're going to have to benchmark ourselves. We've had 100% HRC score for 5 years going. We just got a 90% in the Disability Equality Index. And so we're a leader in supplier diversity, a top corp by WeBank, the Women's Business Enterprise National Council. We want to continue that leadership trajectory. Finally, we want to achieve and sustain a 10% supplier diversity goal. We believe that it benefits the bank, our customers, and our communities for us to have a robust and diverse supply chain, and that includes persons of color, those that are differently able, LGBTQ+, and of course, our African American business owners.
That is so impressive. I appreciate that deep dive, Stephanie, into the internal commitments y'all have made. And I think this year, given the various just hugely national movements and headlines that we've all experienced, there's been a lot of chatter about these issues, and you have demonstrated that Fifth Third is making a very real and specific set of investments on these issues, and ones that are measurable and that can, be publicized and y'all can hold yourselves accountable to, which I think is so important. After that deep dive in terms of the internal workings at Fifth Third, Kala, I have a question for you about sort of another side of the coin of workforce. And Marc spoke a little bit to this point in terms of small businesses and entrepreneurs. And I didn't know, I learned something from Marc today that 85 to 90% of Black-owned businesses have one employee. That's a staggering statistic. So I want to talk a little bit about the bank's launch of Entrepreneurs of Color in 2017, starting in Detroit and Chicago. And then I think in 2018 in your home footprint of Cincinnati. So can you talk about some specific successes or learnings you've had from that work, how you see that evolving at all based on anything that is happening sort of in the current commitments or climate, and how the external investment in this space is looking specific to entrepreneurs in the Black community?
Yeah, so I think it's really important that we kind of break out entrepreneurship and small business. So you're right, that the majority of African-American businesses are 1 to 5 employees. The majority of small businesses, quite frankly, across the country, minority or non-minority, are 1 to 5 employees, right? But the difference with our community is this, and I like to refer to our program as it reflects urban entrepreneurs. So urban entrepreneurs, again, are individuals that have skills and talents, but they may lack the access to capital. A lot of entrepreneurs or traditional entrepreneurs, these are folks who had jobs. Maybe they had a job like mine, Stephanie and Stephanie's, and they decided that, hey, I'm gonna go try something different, right? So they're coming with some money, they're coming with some connections, they're coming with a network. But when you think about urban entrepreneurs, they have a talent, they have a dream, they prefer to work on their own, and they're somewhat shut out actually from what I call the mainstream kind of financial network. And our goal, partnering with CDFIs, is how do we actually bring them to the forefront and bring them to the banking industry. And some of this was with PPP. The majority of our PPP loans were actually to sole props, individuals with 1 to 5 employees. But we really had to reach out to them and bring them into the bank and use our group of small business community lenders to do that. And so our goal is to partner with CDFIs and other institutions around our footprint that are actually in these communities, these underserved communities, and they're able to help us kind of build a pipeline to funnel resources into those neighborhoods. And one of the things that's going to be critical is that we can't take a traditional approach to this. So we've seen numerous times how, folks get declined because of credit score, and it may not necessarily be because they have the bad credit score. They may not have a credit score at all, right? Because they've been used to using cash because they've been shut out of the system. So then when they're ready to grow, They decide, they go into a bank, they want to apply, they get declined. So our job is to make sure that we figure out creative ways to solve for that, so that those individuals not only have access to capital, but they also have access to technical assistance so that they can grow their business, they can improve their credit score, create a credit score for that matter. And if those things aren't tied together, it's just not going to work. So, it takes a village to get this done. And, we're going to continue to partner with folks outside the four walls of Fifth Third Bank to get this done.
I appreciate that distinction, Kala, between entrepreneurs and small businesses. Thanks for making that. And for some of the specific ways in which Fifth Third has committed to supporting entrepreneurs. Stephanie, I have a question in a similar vein in terms of if you could share with us some of the specific innovative banking solutions that Fifth Third has for un- and underserved communities. We heard some of the ways in which y'all are supporting entrepreneurs. Can you talk more broadly about some of the tools or solutions that y'all have for individuals, the innovative banking solutions you have for un- and underbanked clients?
Yes, Tanya, thanks for the question. So I'm really excited because I do believe Fifth Third is a leader in this space. We, for a long time, have been coming up with creative and innovative approaches to really respond to community needs. And so one of our comprehensive suite of financial education programs that we have is called LIFE. And it stands for Lives Improved Through Financial Empowerment. And essentially, this is a tool of resources that we use to support individuals at all stages and ages of life. And so some of our youth programs that we have one of our signature programs is called our Young Bankers Club program, which is designed to educate elementary age students on financial education. We're extremely excited because right now we're in the process of digitizing this program to allow us to scale and expand our reach and impact with this program. But we've been running this program for over a decade and have touched thousands and thousands of youth in elementary school. And one of the newer programs that we also have targeted to youth is our Finance Academy program, and it's targeted to high school students. And this program is a digital personal finance and also entrepreneurship program that we deliver in partnership with an agency by the name of EverFi. And we integrate this into schools throughout our bank's footprint. And so we reach with that program over 150,000 students on an annual basis with personal financial education and also entrepreneurship training. So really excited about some of the offerings that we have for our youth program. For adults, this is another area that we have been a leader in, and it's one of the key signature programs that I think as a bank, we've been the most proud of, and it's called our Financial Empowerment Mobile and our Banking to Go pop-up. And so this is a bus that's retrofitted with Fifth Third garb, and it's got computers on board the bus. And we travel around the bank's footprint to provide underserved LMI communities, low and moderate income communities with access to financial products and services. These empowerment services are staffed by bankers. We also partner with HUD certified counseling agencies to offer access to free credit reports, financial coaching, access to job search tools, access to financial products like opening up accounts. So with that program, we've been running it for about almost 20 years now. And I will tell you, with all of our LIFE programs, we're reaching approximately 200,000 underserved individuals annually, directly where they live, work, and play. And what I will say for me, it's about the individual lives that we touch and the countless numbers of notes and stories we get from individuals that have used these programs, and really the profound impact that these services have had on their lives. It goes from helping individuals get a job. We get notes from individuals that have gotten into home ownership that really didn't ever believe that that was possible. And even even down to the students whose eyes are open to the unlimited possibilities in their life. And so that's why we do this work and why we continually look for creative and innovative ways to be responsive to the needs of our communities.
Hey, Tanya, let me add one thing to what Stephanie
Please.
stated, which I think is really critical. Again, it's the idea that we have to take the bank to the community. You know, a lot of times we're waiting for folks to come through our four doors and it's just, or our front door, but it's not going to happen. So we have to make sure that we're actually going into the communities, all the different things that Stephanie's talked about, and then hopefully, right, be able to create an environment where one, they're comfortable coming into the bank, but most importantly, they start to build a plan, as she mentioned, how they can improve their lives financially, health-wise, and everything else. So again, Stephanie, thank you for what you're doing and looking forward to what you're going to continue to do.
Thank you, Kala.
You took the words out of my mouth, Kala. It's really clear in all of the responses that you, Stephanie, and Stephanie have been sharing with us how rooted y'all are in your community and how a part of the fabric you feel yourselves to be. And I think that's really demonstrated in the products and programs that you offer. We have a couple audience questions, and I think this first one, Stephanie Smith, you might be well suited to respond to. It's a multi-part question, so I'll just ask you a piece of it. The question is that there are many and long overdue initiatives underway to assist underserved communities in accessing capital and resources. And a companion issue to this is the people of color at various levels within an organization, particularly at decision-making levels and board of director levels. So the question is, what specific efforts is Fifth Third engaged in to impact the sort of equity across the various tiers?
I think that's a great question. And what I will say is that as a part of the work under the Executive Diversity Leadership Council, one of the ideas, and Kala is our executive sponsor, and I'm the work stream sponsor for that. And he really introduced a really great idea that we didn't have to wait to change everything for all 20,000 of our employees and our 2,600 Black employees and other dimensions of diversity, but that we could really impact our 100 plus members of our top management committee. Those are the top 100 leaders within the company. And so we set the goal there. We set the goal that over our 3-year period, 2021 through 2023, that we would obtain, our target is 15%. That's huge because what we know is that retention is all about seeing yourself leading. Which is why you're hearing Kala say, speak to not only the promotion of Stephanie Stewart-Young, but also her other peer, Jada Grandi-Moss. These are critical. This is a part of the journey that we set in June, and we're already making progress. What I will also tell you is that for the first time across our enterprise, we are bringing in 3 really third-party consultants. One will help us continue to amplify the voice of our employees through listening sessions. It is not only important that we hear the voice of our customers and our community leaders, it is critical that we hear the voices of our 20,000 plus employees with a specific ear for those that have been most impacted in this current environment, our Black employees. However, we were all impacted by the events of May 25th. So we're going to continue the listening sessions that we started earlier and through the summer. Second, we felt it was impossible to have these conversations without talking about crucial conversations and training our managers. Fifth Third has almost 4,000 people managers. We need to help them be able to have not only conversations that are relevant in this moment, but conversations going forward. We know that in the banking industry, we're in the business of having crucial conversations in our communities, with our customers, with the marginalized. During the Great Financial Depression, there is always going to be a need to be equipped and resourced to have difficult conversations. So we're going to focus on that. Finally, and I won't say lastly, we are bringing in a consultant to look across the employee life cycle from how we bring and onboard employees through those exit surveys to look for unconscious bias. not only are we going to be looking with a third-party provider, but we are going to be seeking best in practice solutions around how we might see the diversity that we're looking for. Like they say, be the change that you want to see. Fifth Third is committed. Obviously, we have a path ahead, but I hope that we're sharing with you today that we're taking this journey very seriously, we're leaned in, and we're not expecting, as you heard Kala said, we're not just going to come up with our own lens. We've been looking at these numbers for years. We are seeking the advice and counsel of experts to ensure that we have the representation that we've outlined in our bold goals.
Stephanie, I appreciate that so much. You in your first response had talked about the very impressive volume of Fifth Third employees that had gone through different types of training and the experience they had working there, and coupling that with actual numbers and hiring with that intentional diversity, I think is such a important and powerful complement to the actual workplace practices that y'all are leading on. I knew this would happen. We have come to just a few minutes left in our hour. I think that I would enjoy continuing this conversation, and we'll certainly find ways to do that off of the webinar. We've had great attendance and a great number of people that have stuck around. So I really appreciate that. I want to thank everyone who did participate. We've noted your comments. We'll make sure that Fifth Third gets them. I'm going to close by asking my panelists a little bit of a tough question, and I'll start with the two Stephanies and then have Kala wrap us up. If you could, both Stephanies and Kala, I'll give you a few more sentences, but if you could say in just 1 to 2 sentences, very briefly, what you are most excited about in the new year, besides a potential vaccine, but specifically around the work that Fifth Third is doing towards increased equity and financial health equity. Just 1 to 2 quick sentences, bullet point. Stephanie Stewart-Young, we'll start with you, then move to Stephanie Smith and Kala. If you could close this out, I would love that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you for facilitating the session. You did an excellent job. I would say it's so much that I'd like to see accomplished, but I think I'm excited the most for the work that the bank is going to do to really advance, make advancements for minority communities and really make systemic changes that will really make an impact on individuals' lives in these communities. And also within the bank and for our customers. And so I'm excited about the announcement that we're going to be having, but most importantly, the work that we're really going to do in the communities and in the neighborhoods.
Yes, we can't wait for that announcement.
So what I would say, Tanya, is that as I look historically about the struggle of Black people in this country and the civil rights movement that has been leveraged for the freedoms of so many, I believe that we are still charged to accomplish Martin Luther King's dream. I believe that the arc of the universe does bend towards justice. These are challenging conversations, challenging times, and I believe we're up to the task. As awesome as the task is, we will not eradicate racial inequality, inequities. We will not be able to do that through a strategic initiative from 2021 through 2023, but we will be able to progress against it. Of that, I am assured and confident with the team of leaders you see here. These are my colleagues and my peers. That's where I get my confidence.
And I think, Tanya, Stephanie, we could have ended on that. Stephanie said it best. This is a moment. I don't want us to lose this moment. So my ask of folks on the phone and our partners, hold us accountable, continue to work with us, collaborate. So I'm excited about 2021. And again, happy to be working with this great team at Fifth Third.
That was wonderful. I appreciate y'all so much and everyone on the phone that joined us. Everyone have a great rest of your afternoon and soon to be weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.